Alleged Parliament arsonist Zandile Mafe has suffered yet another legal blow. The Western Cape High Court has dismissed an application that he be released on bail after spending 5 months in custody. The 3 judges said it had been a split judgment and that reasons would be provided to all the parties in due course. Judge James Lukeleni told the court that he would have granted the accused bail with conditions. The 49-year-old faces charges of arson, housebreaking, terrorism and theft for January's blaze, which severely damaged the National Assembly.
Thank you. After careful consideration of all the papers and having had counsel, I will make the following order. The application is dismissed.
I agree with my brother Tulare.
Thank you. As I said, I'm going to give a dissenting judgment to the decision of the majority. In my view, after a careful consideration of all the issues and after a careful consideration of all the evidential material that has been placed before court, and after a careful consideration of the arguments that have been presented, I would have upheld the appeal and I would have directed that the accused be released on bail subject to certain bail conditions. And that will be my dissenting judgment to the decision of the majority. But as I said, the reasons of judgment in relation to the judgment for the majority and the reasons of judgment in relation to the judgment for the minority will be forwarded to the parties in due course.
Well, let's then find out about the state of Parliament. We're joined by the National Assembly Speaker, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula. Good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time tonight. I suppose the big question on everybody's mind is, when is Parliament going to finally reopen its doors?
Finally open its doors, I think, well, Kathy, currently the Parliament is at work. We do have a chamber which we are using, and that is the Good Hope Chamber. Business of Parliament continues in that committees continue to work. The chamber itself, as I say, it's a chamber which can accommodate up to 120 members of Parliament. So the business of Parliament is done on a hybrid format. Committees, there are committee rooms where members are able to conduct their physical meetings. Unfortunately, we are unable to have hybrid in those rooms. So it is either committees do a physical meeting or a virtual meeting. So I would want to say that the work of Parliament continues. I know that there are people who are of the view that we must find an alternative venue in the medium to long term where members of Parliament can operate from. But it is correct maybe, but I do want to say this to you, that the unfortunate thing is that much as people are demanding, making this call for a physical sitting of all members of Parliament, the sad thing is that people are unable to fill the capacity of the Good Hope Center. The 120 members who are expected to be in the chamber, in fact, are never in the chamber. It's not everybody who's supposed to be in the chamber who does comply with that. So I'm just saying business of Parliament continue, work of oversight continue, reports are given, continue to be given to Parliament, passing legislation continues, reports of committees from committees still are being tabled in Parliament, questions to ministers, questions to the executive as it is to the president and the deputy president are still being raised, and they are available, they avail themselves in the Good Hope Chamber to answer those questions. So I do not want people to think that there is no business of Parliament. Business of Parliament continues in spite of the fact that we are operating in smaller venue than the one which we had, which could accommodate about 400 to 500 MPs. For now, we are in a smaller venue, but it has not stopped us from continuing with the work of Parliament. And Kathy, it's important for people to understand, yes, sittings of Parliament, physical. The most important of all the work of Parliament is really oversight work over the executive, even over the executive of Parliament. So those are the key issues, and that has not stopped. That work continues.
Speaker, you talk about the fact that the work of Parliament is continuing, and then also mention the fact that, MPs are not always filling the Chamber of Good Hope to full capacity. People are not showing up. Is it a case of absenteeism? Is it people just bunking work because they know they can say that, they'll join via hybrid? And is it something that you're concerned about?
I am concerned about it, particularly because parties, even last week, you may have picked this up, that I had a meeting with the leaders of political parties. And the one issue which leaders of political parties are raising with us is how soon can we make a venue available such that all members of Parliament are able to attend the sessions physically. But the issue is, even the 120 currently allocated to different parties are unable, some of them, to meet the numbers which have been given to them. Only last week, as they were raising the matter, in fact, members were not in Parliament. So I'm just saying that's unfortunate, I guess, and I think I should say this, Katie, that people have become very comfortable with the virtual arrangements or even with the hybrid arrangements. People are very comfortable working at home, but in fact, there is a need now to have people coming forward and avail themselves and operate from the chambers of Parliament.
Let's talk about how long it's going to take to actually have the National Assembly or have Parliament either restored or the call for an alternative venue to be found. Of course, all of it is, associated with cost, but from what you know, what are the time frames that you're working within here?
Okay. I must say that it is a challenge, Kathy. It is a challenge in that, firstly, for quite some time, we could not access the building of Parliament. The Hawks were conducting a forensic investigation in Parliament, and now that they've done with that, it has been handed over to us, and the Department of Public Works is on site using the KUKA consultants to do an assessment of the extent of the damage in Parliament. The reality is that, Katie, we will not be able to use that particular building in the near future. The challenge is for us to go out and take a decision about alternative venue, including a discussion that should run parallel that process, which is, after everything, what is it that South Africa wants? Do we want to keep this particular building and rebuild it, depending on what these engineers from KUKA will advise us? Or are we saying maybe it is about time for us to reconsider where Parliament should be located? I'm raising this because I have heard voices which suggest that Speaker or the Executive Authority of Parliament, now that this has happened, maybe it is time for South Africa to consider moving Parliament to Pretoria. And the issue is that is not a decision.
Unfortunately, we've lost that connection to the National Assembly Speaker, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula. In fact, I understand she's back up on the line. Speaker, we just couldn't hear you properly as you were talking about how this contributes to the debate on moving Parliament. And much of that debate, of course, is centered around costs, how much it will take to move Parliament, to relocate Parliament to Pretoria. At this point, we haven't even officially been given figures of how much it's going to cost to even try and repair or even remodel Parliament. What are the figures that you're currently working with?
You will not be able, I can assure you, Katie, to get the figures right now. But there are various options on the table, and one of the proposals which have been made by the officials is that of a modular structure to be built within the precincts of Parliament as an alternative which we can use for the next 2-3 years. But talking long term, it is difficult for now to say this is what it will cost to restore that building of Parliament, because the reality is that the extent of the damage in that building is such that it may not be possible for us to rebuild or even restore the building as it is now. But we may want at some point, depending to those who are technically equipped or engineers, we may decide that, look, maybe we need to start from the scratch and start building a new Parliament completely. And I'm saying that decision is a decision which must be taken by South Africans as to when we do that, what do we do? Bearing in mind the way do we do that, but bearing in mind as well that the fact that Parliament is in Cape Town is actually in our constitution. It is, Cape Town is a seat of Parliament. So whatever decision people want to take and views expressed, people, South Africans, should take that into consideration. But my view is that it's not a decision which can be taken by an individual. It is a decision which must be taken at some point by all South Africans as to whether we want to move Parliament from Cape Town and take advantage of what has happened or not.
Before I let you go, I want to speak about the increasing fuel prices that South Africans are anticipating ahead of tomorrow. It's a big problem, and affordability is just such a big issue for so many South Africans. Let's talk about the role of Parliament and the role that you think Parliament can play, in its oversight and monitoring and making sure that the executive is also coming to the table in meeting South Africans halfway.
Okay, thank you very much. This morning, the Minister of Finance, Minister Enoch Godongwana, made a request to address Parliament. As things are right now, I had a discussion with the Secretary or the Clerk of the National Assembly, Mr. Kaso, to say he needs to look into the matter and processes through the programming committee, whether in fact we will be able to accommodate the Minister of Treasury, of Finance, so that he can address us. But equally, last week we received a request from a political party requesting that there should be a debate in the chamber on the fuel prices. So it's a matter which currently is on the table in Parliament. It is being discussed. And I actually believe that now that the Minister has made this request, when there is already a request made by one of the opposition parties for a discussion, we may actually have a joint discussion of the matter where the Minister presents whatever alternative or ideas he may be having and address the people of South Africa through Parliament and allow for a debate by members of Parliament after that statement. So that's where we are. It is a matter of concern. Members are very concerned about it. It is impacting even as you would know, on the work of everybody, the fuel prices, when you look at even the cost of tickets, airline tickets, have gone up. So, and we are saying it's very, very difficult for South Africans, and therefore it is important that those who are deployed to this in this area of oversight should exercise their oversight and ensure that ministers brief us on a regular basis about what alternative solutions they have.
Will the minister's address be this week?
We would like him to address this week because that is the request. So we're trying to see what the programming committee can do to accommodate the minister.
Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, let me thank you for your time tonight on News at Prime.